Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. In this video, we're going to talk about one of the most important signals in the analysis of Bitcoin and crypto. It's by far one of the signals out there that people don't pay attention to. And also, guys, I'm going to show you some of the comments I got on my previous video on Bitcoin. I'm going to read some of these comments to you. And I think these comments are key to understanding what's happening to Bitcoin right now, what can happen in the next few months. All right, guys, join me. Alright guys, welcome back. So in this video, I want to talk about one of the most important signals when it comes to analyzing Bitcoin and crypto. In case you're wondering, this particular signal is not something you see on a chart, but it's extremely important and I think we need to pay attention to it. It's something that gets ignored by most analysts out there, but we're not going to ignore it and we're definitely going to pay attention to it. Plus also guys, there's some very interesting comments that I want to read to you about my previous video as well. In fact, let me just start from there. As you may recall, some weeks ago, I published a video you probably saw, and my question in the video was whether it was likely that this year in 2023, we could get a kiss of death signal on the monthly chart of Bitcoin. In case you don't know, the kiss of death signal is a very bearish sign. And as you may recall, I said in my video that I do not expect any kind of kiss of death signal this year. In fact, I'm quite bullish on Bitcoin this year. And I mentioned that I think a kiss of death signal for this year is unlikely, a very low probability, as long as Bitcoin stays above 20K. So that was my outlook for Bitcoin in that video. Now it's interesting because I got some feedback on that video in the comment section. And I want to read you some of those comments because they're very important. In case you're wondering, this is actually extremely important. You may recall last year I published a video and I explained that one of the most important signals when it comes to analyzing Bitcoin is the comments on social media, especially the comments you get on YouTube videos. And I do pay attention to the comments I get in my, again, on my YouTube videos. And I noticed a specific pattern among most of these comments. Comments like this. Let me just read this to you. By the way, I blacked out the names in these comments because I don't want to embarrass anyone. Again, I do think they're intelligent people who wrote these comments. Now, here's one comment here. Bitcoin is in a retrace and will come back to lows and probably break them. So rather a pessimistic and negative comment. In other words, this comment here is disagreeing with my bullish analysis of Bitcoin. Here's another one for you. This one is saying Ethereum is not bullish. It's doing a trap in previous top level. Here's another one for you. Completely disagree. We're going to see the kiss of death this year. Here's another one. ETH had the fake breakout. This is bearish. How about this one here? The epic crash is weeks away. Sorry guys, on Alessio. And here's another one here. I like your channel and analysis on stocks. I don't like your views on crypto. Crypto is a highly risky, speculative asset class. Government will never give up control and so on and so on. By the way, those are just some of the comments that I noticed. Now here's the thing. I think these comments have a very special meaning and significance, which I'll talk about in this video. Because as I said earlier, it's very important to pay attention to what people are saying on social media, for example, on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, in the YouTube comment section. And often they can give us some clues about the sentiment out there among people out there. And as I said before, I think the comments on social media and on YouTube are by far one of the most important sentiment indications out there for Bitcoin and crypto especially. Now I'm going to explain to you the meaning and significance of these comments to you in a few minutes. Before we do that though, let me just give you some context and some background. And this part of the video, even though you may think it's not important or nothing to do with Bitcoin, it is actually quite important to understand. I was recently reading about the French philosopher Michel Foucault, who happens to be one of my favorite philosophers of the last century. And Michel Foucault, I think, is a very intelligent person, and he came up with an idea, which I want to share with you. You see, one of the interesting ideas from the philosopher Michel Foucault is this, that humanity, the human race, goes through long periods of time where a specific idea dominates. In other words, some kind of thinking or a mode of thinking has strong power and domination in that period. By the way, Foucault calls this episteme. Episteme or episteme simply means a system of thoughts or a system of thinking or a mode of thinking. And I'll give you some examples here. One example which Foucault himself used is an interesting one. About a couple of thousand years ago, so a very long time ago, people believed that you're mad if you're controlled by some kind of demon. Now, this idea or episteme of madness being associated with demons eventually changed. In the 18th century, the episteme or the system of thinking was that you're mad if you're not rational or if you're not logical. So in that century, in that period, just about anyone could be thought to be mad. For example, if you were homeless or unemployed, you'd be considered as irrational and therefore mad. You'd be put into some kind of a prison or a madhouse. Similarly, if you were a woman with sexual thoughts, then you'd be considered as, again, not normal or irrational. By the way, one of my favorite philosophers from the 18th century, who is Marquis de Sade, he was put in prison because he wrote books about people having sex. And at the time, people thought that if you write stories like that, then therefore you're probably mad or insane, and you have to go to prison and a madhouse. And of course, Marquis de Sade was put in prison for quite a while. Now, let's fast forward to the last 150 years. You see, guys, In the 19th century and also in the last 100 or so years, the meaning of madness or the episteme, the system of thinking about madness, has changed. Today, and I would say in the last 150 years, madness is no longer about being possessed by demons or being irrational or not logical. Today, madness is associated with a brain issue or a neurological issue. So the episteme of madness, the system of thinking on madness, has become a medical issue. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the philosophy of Michel Foucault to Bitcoin and, in fact, chart analysis. You see, guys, as you probably have noticed, the system of thinking, the mode of thinking, or the episteme with which people view Bitcoin and crypto, and I would say not just Bitcoin and crypto, but also other markets too, the episteme changes depending on what the price is doing. For example, if you recall what Bitcoin was doing back in the summer of 2021, during the massive bull market when it was shooting up, when Bitcoin was going to 50,000 and nearly to 60,000, the way of thinking, the system of thinking, or the episteme as Foucault calls it, was that Bitcoin can never go back down again. Bitcoin can only go up. In other words, the idea that Bitcoin could go back down into a bear market or crash was simply ridiculous. At the time, the system of thinking or the episteme was one of over bullishness, but also something else, something that the analyst Robert Prechter calls mechanism. Mechanism, or a mechanistic way of thinking, is the idea that price is driven not by emotion or psychology or cycles, but by fundamentals and news. So usually, when price is rallying higher in a massive raging bull market, like Bitcoin was doing in the summer of 2020, and also I would say during the major rally that we saw in 2017, when Bitcoin for the first time reached the 19K, almost 20K region, during these major bull market runs and again market peaks, the episteme, the system of thinking, is not just one of over bullishness, but it's also one of mechanism. Again, the mechanistic episteme, or the mechanistic mode of thinking, is that price can only go up because price is driven by fundamentals. As we know, as I've said this before, price is not driven by fundamentals or news, but it's driven primarily by emotion, sentiment, and psychology, the psychology of the market participants. However, guys, when Bitcoin topped and started crashing and dropping last year in 2022, that episteme, that mode of thinking, completely changed. If you recall, when Bitcoin was crashing hard last year in 2022, when it was in a major downtrend, the system of thinking, or the episteme, was one of pessimism, extreme bearishness, and that Bitcoin can never go back up again. And by the way, the episteme of mechanism changed to one of cyclicality, or cycles. In other words, people no longer thought that Bitcoin was dropping and crashing because of fundamentals. No, they believe that Bitcoin was dropping because of cycles, that we have a bullish cycle and now we have a bearish cycle. And by the way, this view I do think is correct. So I do agree with this view of cyclicality and that we have different cycles. But my point is the episteme, the mode of thinking, the system of thinking completely changed. People were no longer thinking about fundamentals driving the price of Bitcoin down. People were no longer expecting Bitcoin to go back up or rally. In fact, the episteme was that Bitcoin can only go down and that cycles is what driving the price of Bitcoin down. Psychology and cycles. So here's what I think about those comments I read to you at the start of my video. The comments had a very specific flavor to them. Again, the flavor or the episteme was one that this rally is a fake rally. It's not a genuine rally in Bitcoin, that this rally eventually is going to fail and we're going to go back and test new lows again this year. Again, as you can see here, ETH at the fake breakout is bearish. The epic crash is weeks away. Ethereum is not bullish, it's doing a trap. So again, as you can see, the mode of thinking, the episteme, that I think still right now, as I'm making this video, it seems to me, and I could be wrong about this, but it seems to me that the episteme, again, Foucault terminology here about the system of thinking, is that Bitcoin is still in a major bear market, that this rally is a fake rally. There's a lot of disbelief right now in crypto and Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin cannot really go higher. It can only go back down again and test new lows. So it seems to me that the episteme with regards Bitcoin and crypto right now, even as I'm making this video right now, after this major rally, is one of negativity and over bearish sentiment. And I think the episteme is still one of cycles or cyclicality. But I think this episteme will change eventually sometime this year. I think the episteme of mechanism, of fundamentals, schmundamentals driving the price of Bitcoin up, that will return probably sometime this year if I'm right about the bull market continuing into this year. And this actually is one of the most important points I want to make in this video. The kind of comments that I just read to you, these comments are not the kind of comments you see at the top of the market. These were not the kind of comments you saw in the major bull market tops that we had in 2021 and also in the major top we had in 2017. These are not the kind of comments you see in a raging, massive bull market, especially when that bull market rally is about to make a top and then make a reversal and go back down. So these kind of comments are not the kind of comments you typically see at the top of a market. No, to me, these are the kind of comments you might get or usually get at the beginning of another bull market, which I think is very likely now, or at the end of a previous bear market. So in my view, these comments, these rather bearish, negative comments, very pessimistic comments, the episteme that the price cannot go back up, can only go lower, these kind of comments you typically see at the beginning of another or a new bull market. So that's my belief. I think that if it's correct that we're in the beginning of another major bull market on Bitcoin, which I think is quite likely as long as Bitcoin stays above 20K, then I think these kind of comments will soon come to an end. I think perhaps in the next few months. I think if Bitcoin continues to rally higher in the next several months, which I think is quite likely, then I think you're going to see the episteme, the system of thinking, change from one of cycles to mechanism. Again, fundamentals, schmundamentals, pushing price up. And you're going to see comments that are the opposite of what I just showed you in this video. You're going to see comments saying that Bitcoin can never go back down again. It can only go up and a lot higher. So that episteme of over bullishness, or indeed, I should say, of mechanism has not yet happened. But I think we're going to come to it in the next several months of this year. But to me, these negative and pessimistic comments, and again, I respect the people who posted them. I'm not trying to criticize them. I do think they're smart people. I just happen to disagree with them. And in my view, those negative, pessimistic comments about Bitcoin are a likely bullish factor, a contrary bullish sign for Bitcoin. All right, guys, hope this video has helped. Please make sure you subscribe for future video updates. Thank you very much indeed. Bye for now.